All right. While I wait for people, I'm going to read comments from recent videos. Boom, boom, boom. All right. This one is a comment on find the best dose for you, testosterone and growth hormone. You trust more farm GH, or is any good UGL brand now available these days? As usual, terrible English. I think farm is great, but overpriced relative to UGL GH. If you're made of money, then waste it on farm grade, or hire me and get UGL GH and make more progress than if you spent the money on farm. What's up from Novi? Love your channel. Nicholas Barbecue. So there's a Nicholas Barbecue on Telegraph, just south of 696. Is that the one the one who's in front of Powerhouse Southfield? Is that the same Nicholas Barbecue? Is that what? Viking. Hey. All right, cool. I'm all cut up. What's your opinion on running HCG concurrently alongside T? If you want to have big balls for big balls and big loads, have at it. It's for the ladies. It has no value to us men. All right. That's me. Dude, I almost went in the other day. That is like some of the best fucking Greek food out there. I love that place. I haven't been in like 10 years, but boy, is it good. Leonardo de Micheli, literally the best channel. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, Nicholas. I would say I was there in 2013 last time, so I'm gonna have to come in. My next off day is when I'll have my next untracked off-plan meal. I will swoop in. What would that be? It'd be like Friday. What's today? Sunday? It'd be like Thursday. I'll come in on Thursday, I think. Bend over. Ways to help sleep on 19 hours. Just don't take it. Like, you don't have to take you don't need to force a bad steroid to be good. Just don't take it. You don't need to take Tren. You don't need to take like I had, even though my glutes weren't completely in, I was still really fucking lean, and I didn't use any 19 hours all year. That's since April of 2022. I haven't used any 19 hours. Hey Doc, love. Oh, sorry guys. Hey Doc, listen. By the way, have you tried Kefal? Good stuff. Keefy. I'm not sure what that is. Is that like the yogurt probiotics? I answered your question, by the way, Coach Box. I think you asked me a question. I answered it this morning. All right, cool. All right, sweet. Just send it to me on Instagram, Todd Lee MD. That'd be fucking sweet. Thoughts on the Optitrope versus Metatrope? I don't know Optitrope very well, but I know Metatrope like a motherfucker. I've talked to the guy who makes it. I know the excipients. I've had it tested in China. I had the same batch mailed out to the United States and had it tested through like an inside person at one of the U.S. pharmaceutical companies, and It is 98.6 identical. Here's the thing: in China, it was 99%. By the time it made it to New Jersey, it was 98.6%. So some of the strands broke in transit, but it was half of a percent broke in transit. So it didn't lose much potency. It lost 1/200th its potency. I've ran serial comparisons, 18 Serostrim versus 18 Metatropin, the same every way, shape, and form. I went from 18 Serostim for 4 weeks to 18 Metatropin for 4 weeks, back to the Serostim. I've done mixtures. I've done everything you can possibly do. There is virtually no difference that I hold more water because they don't put mannitol in the Serostim. So, believe it or not, the IGF-1s were the same, the growth hormone was the same, the HbA1c is the same. Phil Viz just did an episode talking about this on Sebastian Burke's channel, Brass Tacks Bodybuilding. I literally did every single thing to test it that he looks for because me and Phil had this conversation like 7 years ago. And I've always remembered that conversation because he had the most strict, most convincing argument I've ever heard against generics. In the case of Metatrope, and I'm not speaking for all generics because I don't like the term generics. He uses the term generics. I use the term underground GH. Metatrope, specifically Metatrope, to me is as good as pharma. And there are people on the internet who say pharma is always best, always use Serostrim. What they actually do is they use Metatrope. And then they might use Serostim with the Metatrope, or some of the time they say Serostim online, but behind closed doors, they're still using Metatropes. That goes for all of the fitness influencers that talk shit about, and almost all the IFBB pros. Or they use a different Chinese GH. I just recently Mastron has absolutely nothing to do with it, but Letrozole and Primo would. Nothing pisses me off more when people confuse Mastron with Primo. All right. Outstanding. Thanks. God, I'm going to have to put up with that bullshit for the rest of my life. People who get Mastron and Primo confused. Maybe just a me problem, but is there any possible explanation as to why I get the most vivid and distressing nightmares on 19 hours? I don't know. I know that a lot of people say that Nandrolone gives them anxiety, and Tren definitely hurts my sleep. I get dreams when I use GH a certain way. Doc, I've dropped my EQ from 200 to 100, and my EQ is still coming at single digit on 500 tests. Well, I mean, how long did you wait? EQ is supposed to be like 70, 100 days before it completely goes out. You'd have to wait like 3 months for the EQ to be really out of your system. What are your plans post-show? How lean are you planning on staying, and for how long until the next bulk phase? So I don't believe in bulking. I believe that you should try to gain lean mass. So because of how badly I shit the bed on the peak, I gave in to the concept of having a coach. And it's frustrating because in the past, you have a coach and you're doing things you don't agree with for an entire year so that they can peak you for one day. And then most of the time they fuck off at the end and they stand you up, or they don't answer their phone, or you have no way of reaching them, or they say they're going to be there for the show and they don't show up. So you blow a whole year of your life counting on this other person, they don't do it. So I was like, I'm gonna have to just learn how to beat myself because these coaches are unreliable. But I've got the money now to hire like a top end coach, and I've went to several coaches, and nobody will take me on as a client. I don't know why. I think it might be because if you look at it from a business standpoint, you've got 100 people. They're all paying the same price. Why would you waste your time answering questions or justifying your reasoning to somebody when you have 99 other people who just obey you mindlessly? I think it's a liability thing too, is I know enough to be dangerous where I can see through when someone's bullshitting. And if with my platform, if I decide to out someone and say, this coach sucks, he said this, this, and this, and I've got it in writing and blah, 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 and I can basically show some people that there's a coach that doesn't know anything, they have nothing to gain from having me as a client except for money, but they can get money from anybody. So I'm too much of a liability, and that's why no one will work with me. Now, I have never outed some coach online as I said, this coach sucked, and here's why. I just have had bad experiences with coaches. Yeah, I don't care if you take 3.75 cc's a week. What pisses me off if you ask them how much testosterone are you taking, and they say I take 2 cc's. But like if someone's like, I take 3.75 cc as a total measurement of volume, then that's fine. But if I asked you, okay, how many milligrams are you taking, and you answered me with cc's, that would piss me off. Yes, I've seen them. Thought you were gonna make a video about it. Keef is a GMP and isopharma. Tried its GH and test. Do you use pharma, generic, or underground now? I only use underground. I won't, because to me, there is no pharma. There's pharma GH, but it's not worth the money. It's no better on paper than metotropin. And then when it comes to injectable anabolics, I know that the lab I use is as good or better than any of the pharmaceutical companies. All right. What type of cardio is best for reducing heart rate and blood pressure? And how frequently? Okay, so I think what you're asking me is, yes, okay, you were asking me the question the correct way. So I would say start with zone 2 cardio 3 times a week for 20 minutes, then escalate up to HIIT cardio. I believe I have How to Cut, and there's a cardio video. I think it's episode 3, and I compare and contrast cardio. And although the focus of the video is fat loss cardio, I do address the heart health aspect of cardio. But in general, for cardio to actually be cardio, not aerobic exercise, you want it to be anaerobic. And that the best form of anaerobic cardio would be HIIT cardio. A good example is taking an elliptical, a bike, or an arc trainer, something that's low impact. That means not high impact. That means not treadmill, not step mill, not sprinting. And listen to some metal song. Like what I do is I put on YouTube music, and you could watch Shadow of Intent or Disembodied Tyrant or Spire of Lazarus, something that's technical, progressive, deathcore, something that's fast as fuck. And during the intense parts, the chorus, you pedal as fast as you can. And then during the normal verse parts, you just pedal normally. And after the song is about 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, what you do is you compile a playlist. So you have one song, and then after a week, go to 2 songs. Then after 3 weeks, go to 3 songs. At 3 songs, approximately 10 to 15 minutes, that's enough. And you want to be pedaling at 80 to 90% of your maximum heart rate for like 30 seconds, and then cool down for like a minute. But just ride the song. And that's the simplest way to do it. Like trying to hit buttons and measure shit and look at your swap. It's too fucking confusing. Just let the music carry you through it. So pedal really fast. If you're old as dirt and you rather listen to Journey, then during the chorus, pedal fast as fuck the Journey. And then during the verses, pedal normal. And just that's the best way to do it. And you'll find that you look at your Mets or your watts, and you want that to be up there. Ideally, your bets get up to like 15 to 17. 12 means you can climb Everest. That's the joke. 11's healthy. Most people, when they do their cardio, it's 5, 6 Mets. You want to be like getting up to like 14, 15 Mets. Now, that doesn't mean start off like that. You'll die. So the goal is slow, gradual improvements. For instance, if I'm peak off season, I'm doing no cardio at all, walking on a treadmill, I'm not going to do walking on a treadmill, but I'm trying to give you an example. Walking on a treadmill at a 2 miles per hour with a 4 incline, my heart rate will be like 120, 130. At the end of prep, while doing cardio, my heart rate was 74. I couldn't get my heart rate up to 80. I was just too healthy at that point. Cardiovascularly wise, says. See you Thursday. Food's on me. I'll be after 6. Velco. All right, buddy. Sounds like a plan. You don't have to buy my food, though, but that'll be sweet. I was kidding. Oh, I know. Well, but I know what you mean, though, that I hate it when people give me volumes. But I wanted to clarify that in that specific context, that's reasonable to say how many total CCs you're using when you're comparing stuff. What about Baveson for coaching? I don't know who that is. I'm definitely not going to go with someone I don't know. Like, my criteria is pretty critical. I guess I could talk about that. What do I look for in a coach? I look for someone who's going to be there, and I want someone to at least do what I do, which is take phone calls. When it's something as complicated as what I'm doing, like, I'm not doing what other people are doing. I'm going to, like, the way I analyze shit, I need someone to take my phone call or call me back. And I need to talk on the phone and explain why I'm doing it and what I'm doing. I don't explain the coach. I don't expect the coach to come up with my training program. I don't expect the coach to come up with my diet. I don't expect the coach to come up with my cycle. I want someone who is an advisor, someone who I call and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and this isn't working. Let's troubleshoot this. And why are my lats not growing? So I've got here, in our Google Drive folder that we share, here I've submitted a bunch of videos of me doing my lat exercises. Here's my logbook going back the last 10 years. Oof, do you have more data than you need? What am I doing? Here's a list of my SFR exercises. And I think it's overwhelming because it becomes abundantly clear, even if they knew as much as me, they don't process information at the speed that I talk, and or they don't have the time or energy to focus on one client to the degree that I'm focused on me. And when I'm that analytical and I have that much data collection, and I'm like, this is all the data analyzed, and then they say, how about this? And I say, well, according to this study, this, according to this study, this, according to this study, this. I've tried these 3 things in 2010, in 2014, in 2017, and these were the results. And I bring up the data and I bring up the blood work. And then it's like, you can't win an argument because I have whatever idea someone's had, I've already tried it and it didn't work, or it did work, and I can't recreate it. So it's just too much. I'm not saying I'm the smartest person in the world, but I'm too much work for somebody to bother with. Doc, high E2 kills my sex drive. Can Masteron help with that so I can push test? Masteron has nothing to do with E2. What is with fucking people? Primo lowers E2, not Masteron. Jeff, would change anything regarding your hair transplant? Do you go with a different clinic post care? So this is, what do you call it? A lot. What is? It's August or September. So this is like 7 months post transplant. Honestly, if it was shorter, it would look thicker. The reason why you can see so much is because it's so long, it's falling over. I just haven't went and gotten a haircut. If I got it cut closer. There's a place in Sterling Heights that does 7,000 grafts for 3,500. They're basically matching Turkey prices. Had I known that at the time, I wouldn't have went to Turkey. I would just drive 40 minutes to Sterling Heights and have it done. That finally American companies are getting sick of losing business to Turkey, and they're just going to have the U.S. do it. I've had no real problems. I think that the communication was difficult because I spoke English and they didn't that well. Some of the nurses did speak some English, but they couldn't understand me. I could understand them when I was talking, when they were talking, because it was very simple level shit for patients. But when I'm talking to them about medical stuff, they didn't understand. And the doctors don't speak English; they only speak Turkish. So you can't talk to the doctors. So you can't have an actual medical conversation with a medical professional about your health. If someone's a layperson, they speak good enough English. It doesn't really matter. Um, Sorry for the. Oh, here it is. There is no topics. Sorry for the off-topic question. There is no topics. But when is Battle Mead going to be back in stock? I need it. I just dropped 25 grand on it this week, so it should be ready in 4 weeks. All right. Leather Rebel. Training to failure is a superior way for hypertrophy than training with reps in reserve. If you're going to do one set, yeah. And if you're new to lifting, sure. And if you want to get stronger, absolutely. And what I do is I do the first set is approximately my first set. My goal is to break the previous logbook. So if I got 200 pounds for 10 reps, my goal is to get 200 pounds for 11 reps. If it requires to go to failure or not, I don't care. I'm going to try to get 11 reps. If I get 11 reps, I'm not going to push and try to get 12. I'm going to rest 3 minutes. I'm going to do the set again and try to get 11 reps again. Chances are I won't. I will fail before 11. So my first set may or may not be to failure. Every additional set will be to failure because I'll be trying to match that first set. Todd, I know you described Masteron as a neutral anabolic. When I add mass to my stack, even in 140 milligrams, my skin breaks out and persists even when my hormone levels reach peak concentration. All right, so in your case, maybe it's very anabolic at the skin or androgenic at the skin. Although, in my experience, people who have bad skin, it's something else. Either they're obese or their diet sucks or they have other health complications. I don't run into very much skin problems. So to me, it's still neutral. In you have a special side effect where your skin's sensitive to Masteron. Coach, that's mind blowing. Yeah, I've seen now you to test GH with him. Ayusha. I've seen how you test the GH with 10 Ayusha. And did you mention that it's okay to mix? Yes. Yes, absolutely. You can mix GH and test in one syringe. Hello, Dr. Todd. How are you, sir? Doing good, man. Doing good. Did you get any word as to which university you might be attending here in the U.S.? View is pretty one-on-one. I'm sure Colton knows him too. He's very invested in his clients, good guy. I found him from the other thing I look for is that they're going to be there to peak me in person. So right now, like I talked to Stefan and he said he didn't like my philosophy about gear. So he didn't want to work with me, which was weird because I've seen him in an interview say that there are hypertolerators, and in a hypertolerator, you take whatever drug they tolerate, but whether it's Masteron or not, and you run as much as they can tolerate, which is ironic because Wesley Vissers is his client, and me and Wesley Vissers see eye to eye identically on all things. So it's like they get freaked out by the amount of gear I'm using, probably, and my age, and they think it's a liability, like they're going to get in trouble if I die. It's like, you're not responsible for what I do. I'm the doctor. On top of it being my body, I'm the doctor, and I'm not hiring anyone for gear advice. I just want someone to peak me for a show. I don't care what you think about gear or don't think about gear. You don't even have to know what I'm taking. All right. What protocol would you use for dutasteride? I use topical dutasteride. Jake Tratt. Todd, how do I check for any cancer and tumors before touching a bunch of GH? I've never heard of anyone doing that, nor have I ever heard of someone getting cancer from GH. That's kind of like, it's a phobia thing. It's like my mom thinks if you don't lock the door, someone's going to let himself into her house, go upstairs into her room and murder her. Like that's the you're more likely to get murdered in your sleep than getting cancer just because you use GH. GH doesn't cause cancer. It just grows existing cancers. So in your case, and if you're using normal physiologic levels of GH, you'd be more likely to get cancer. It's just so it's a theoretical thing. Like GH leads to IGF-1, and IGF-1 grows cancer cells that are pre-existing. So therefore, the incorrect conclusion is drawn: GH causes cancer. All right, and in regards to the coach thing, like I talked to Jared Feather, I really like how he coaches in regards to training because I love RP and I love Mike Israel's approach, and I know Jared is basically involved like this with Mike. He's even Mike's coach, so I think Jared would be, and he's really friendly, humble guy, and he doesn't pretend to know everything there is to know about gear. So I'm not going to have to argue with someone about gear. He's just going to help me with growing my lats, maybe my arms. He's already given me some good tips for my lats, and he's very confident when it comes to peaking people. So bringing up lats, bringing up quad sweep. Also, as you know, a lot of my blood markers were all fucked up after the show, either for a number of reasons I can't figure out. I have been correcting them myself, but if I had met someone like Chris Tuttle, I asked Chris Tuttle about it, and I would be hiring him because I really like his approach towards nutrition. He's too busy. So I appreciate that he's too busy, and it would be a complicated case because I had the weird blood glucose issue at the time. And I'm 45 years old. So a lot of people are like, okay, you're 45 and you're using 3.5 grams of gear and you've got fucked up blood work. They don't want you to die and then have it blow back on them as if they killed you, as if they endured. And it's like, to me, this is so stupid. If I'm hiring a nutritionist to do my nutrition and I'm hiring a personal trainer to do my personal training, how the fuck are you responsible for me dying from drug use and health problems? One is not the other. It's just like, I don't understand why they don't get it. I will pay full price to get a fraction of your services. I would rather pay $4,000 to this guy to do my training and $4,000 to this guy to do my nutrition, and have whichever one of them is able to show up the day of the show do my peak, and nobody touches my fucking gear. That would be what I'd rather do. I'm more than happy to discuss the gear, and if somebody has a suggestion, I will try it. But nobody keeps the records I do and does the analysis and the blood work I do. It's all anecdotal and it's all experience based. Whereas I don't care how many people you've coached. I've been me for 15 years. I have blood work to prove this is how it works in me. I'm not really interested in input, but I will try it. Like Chris said, bring your gear down and then we'll talk. So I brought my gear down, and then he didn't have time. So it's like, well, now I've dropped all my gear out and you're not going to work with me. So it's like, it's very frustrating because nobody's asking me for any money. If someone said to me like, well, this is what I charge, but you're too much work, it's like, well, I'll pay you double. You know, you'd think that there'd be some capitalists out there where you could just throw money at them and make the problem go away. But nobody wants to do that. And it's just weird. It's just not how I do business. If that's how I would do it. If I came up to somebody and they were like, this house is for rent. And it's like, okay, how much is it for? And then they're like, we charge $3,000 a month. It's like, okay, I'll rent here. It's like, well, I don't like you. I'm not going to rent to you. It's like, okay, I'll pay you $4,000. That's what I would say. And then they'd be like, oh, no. It's like $5,000. And then eventually there'd be a point where their morals would go out the window and they would just take the fucking money. For some reason, coaches aren't like that. You can't just pay them enough money to where they'd fucking work with you. So I don't want to offend someone, but I feel like texting somebody, be like Stefan, and be like, hey, I'll pay you double. Like, you don't charge very much. I'll pay you double. It's like, just work with me. I want the best. Or whatever. All right. Hey, Todd, Vigorous Steve has some videos on cancer markers and blood work. Might be worth looking at. I mean, okay, so here's my thing. I realize you can do cancer markers in blood work. I know a lot of the cancer markers, but here's the false negative. You run 10 different tests or 20 different tests or 30 different tests, and it says, okay, you're clear. And then you get cancer because it didn't show up on the test. So it gives you a false sense of security. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like you're either got cancer and you're going to die, or you don't and you're not. You know, it's like, or if it's not a bad cancer, as soon as it's detected, cut it out. Or if you don't like that approach, if you don't like my extremely low neuroticism approach, feel free to use someone else's methods. I just don't fuck with it. I don't think the using growth hormone for hormone replacement therapy is going to induce cancer. All right. Majority of Asian countries, barring a few, won't emphasize on the importance of English language and do not incorporate it in the school curriculum. This is the reason for the abysmal English communication. Where did that come from, bud? Like, I know your English is phenomenal. Jared Feathers? Yeah, he is an amazing waste. So I thought about working with Jared. I tried to work with Chris. I tried to work with Stefan. And here's the thing, I don't want to offend anybody because maybe they'll change their mind one day. Maybe Chris will become free and he'll have time for me. Maybe Stefan will understand that I have a very reasonable approach and there's a reason why I do what I do. It's not due to insecurity or drug abuse. It's that I've tested it all out and this is the results, that my blood work's fucking perfect. And that's that. And I think a lot of it is Jared isn't in Michigan perpetually. He lives in Vegas right now. Mike's in Michigan. I know. I just wanted to make sure I have no existing cancer, which I know there is no way. Right. There is no way. But I do just want to be 100% sure before. Well, you just said you know there's no way, but you want to be 100% sure. But you can't be 100% sure because there is no way to know you're cancer free. You can have no cancer detected, but that means you might have tumors that are just too small to detect, or that the tests you run aren't show. An MRI isn't going to pick up a big. It would have to be at least a millimeter big. You know, like it's just. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get an MRI done. I'm not saying you shouldn't read Vigorous Steve's list of blood work to get done and spend $7-10 grand on an MRI and some blood work to tell you that they're not sure. Versus they find cancer for sure. Well, I don't know why anyone would waste their money on a serum stem. Doc, what's in your top 3 lat back exercises? Well, considering it's one of my worst body parts, I would say T-bar row for upper back. And I would say straight arm lat pull down unilateral for long head of the tricep and lat. And then when it comes to a compound lift for the lat, I'm still not sure. So I got 2 exercises I'm 100% confident. I guess overall back development, seated cable row with a super big stretch and a wide grip. Hire Greg to set. No, I don't want to spend 45 grand a year. So the thing with Karina is I would normally work with Karina, but she doesn't want to work with me either, which is weird because she's my business partner. She works with our clients, but not me. And I don't get it, but it's something that's now become an issue where finding someone who's going to be there in person, who can peak you in person, is impossible. It's fucking impossible to find someone who's going to be there in person and peak you in person. And then, I could hire Joe Bennett for lat training and just fly down to Florida and train with him. And I've got a posing coach. So Karina would be the person I'd want to use for nutrition primarily. That's my first choice. Second choice would be probably Chris Tuttle for nutrition because he's a registered dietitian But anyway, you asked what my plans were. My plans were originally to find a coach so that I would have someone, and then I would work with that person on planning it all out. But I find that it's really hard to find one of these top level famous coaches that'll work with you, which is so weird. And then and then there's some people out there who do macro coaching, like Justin Harris will tell you how many macros to do. And for years, that's what I was cool with. I was happy with having just macros, but there's a lot to be said for micronutrients where I would want a micronutrient audit. Now I could use chronometer to measure that shit, but I don't, I think I actually got most of the micronutrients covered. Okay, you guys are missing my point. I'm looking for someone to peak me in person. Steve lives in Thailand. Colton lives in Canada. I don't need someone to do my diet. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. I'm certainly not going to hire someone who's not a pro bodybuilder to help me get ready for a bodybuilding competition. That makes no sense, does it? So, I mean, we'll take all the people that aren't pro bodybuilders and wipe them off your plate. But there's no reason to hire someone who's not a pro to do my competition preps for a bodybuilding show. Same thing goes for like, if someone's not a nutritionist, why would I hire them for nutrition? I'm saying like right there, you've limited it down. I'm not saying there aren't people on the planet who can work with me. I'm saying of the people I want to work with, I can't find someone who will take my money. Now, in regards to the goal, the reason for the coach is for peaking. I'll just have to keep experimenting and find a peaking protocol that works with me using J3U. J3U has all this stuff in it that use code TOD5 to get a discount. So to get to his point about what my plans are depending on if I'm going to do 212 or if I'm going to do classic physique based on my body weight. It determines what body parts are prioritized and when I compete again. And so part of this big picture thing is have the coach normally would have a hand in these types of things and help you make these decisions. Now, I've already talked to Tyler, who's the president of the IFBB, and he was like, I agree that you probably should just stick with classic, even though I didn't ever do classic. But because I'm still within the weight cap for classic, you might as well stay classic since you're having such a hard time growing. And that if you're doing classic, bring up your arms, bring up your back, and minimize your waist. And then you're Gucci. He didn't complain about my conditioning. He didn't complain about my peak. So even though I blew my peak and it made my conditioning look like shit, that wasn't why I did badly at the Texas Pro. It was a lack of size. Thank you, Brandon. Every time I ask DJ to come on, she's busy, which is reasonable because she is very busy. Hey, Todd, I know you've mentioned the best time to take GH is before bed. What if you eat your last meal late before bed? What you eat has nothing to do with your GH, really. That Phil Viz has a theory that it does, and maybe he's right, but to my knowledge, it doesn't matter. You were talking about poor communication skills and ink skills of Turkish doctors. Oh, and that's why I expressed my opinion since I live in an Asian country where English is overlooked. Yes, I agree. And it's cool because in England, in America, we don't learn Turkish. So I don't expect them. But people were asking me where would I go to the same place for the hair? I would say that me personally, because I would like to have an intelligent conversation about the medical procedure that's being done to me with someone in English, I would rather talk to the doctor. But if the nurses can't have the conversation either with me, then I'd rather go to a place in America where I can have the conversation with the doctor in English. In America, you get to talk to your doctors. It's weird going to a country and having a procedure done to you that is not by a doctor. Like there was no doctor in the room. I never met a doctor. It was nurses and technicians. This is what I don't understand either. But I said earlier before you probably logged on, my estimation is that it's just not in their best interest because, as Karina put it, and she's my business partner, it's too much work. You don't, like a normal person, you tell them what to do, they don't understand what they're doing, they just do it. That's called coachability. I want to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I would rather come up with a plan and then bring my plan to my coach, who's an advisor and looks over my plan and has notes. Says, well, I like this over here, but I don't like this over here. That a lot of these men want to be in charge, they want to be the alpha, and they don't want someone who's not going to do what they say. They want to have complete control over your entire life. You see this a lot with really heavy-handed coaches are only coaching women. You see that a lot where, and a lot of people don't like working with pros because pros think they know everything is what they say. It's like, well, I went to school for 15 years and I'm a pro and you're not. So why wouldn't I think I know what I'm doing more? Right. So I'm kind of like, there's very few people I can work with because there's very few people who I feel know more than me. And then of the people that I think know more than me, I think they know more than me about one thing, like nutrition or training or the actual competition process of dieting someone down and peaking them for the show. So if I hired someone, I'd be hiring them for one thing. I wouldn't be hiring them for everything. And I'd be open-minded. I would present them with exactly what I plan on doing. Like, this is my training program. This is my diet. This is my cycle. This is what the projected next year looks like. What do you think? And I would listen. I'd be open-minded. I'm paying them. That's the part that people forget is if you're paying someone 4 to 5 grand for the year, you're the boss, not them. So if I'm paying them, I'm going to choose what I do with my body. Like I don't need someone to tell me what to do. I'm 45 years old. But if I don't know what to do, like for instance, my HbA1c is a 6.1 after prep. It was 5.3 on prep. It was 6.1 after prep. How the fuck did that happen? So what this to me sounds like a consult. It makes more sense for me to pay for one phone call with 2 or 3 other people and find someone who knows why would that go up on prep and then troubleshoot it rather than just arbitrarily spending 5 grand on somebody, hiring them as a coach and having them say, yeah, well, I don't know what it is, but they wouldn't say that. They'd be like, it's your gear. Let's pull all your gear. And then, oh, it's your diet. Let's pull all your food. And oh, it's your training. Let's change all your training. Then 6 months later, you've lost a bunch of muscle, gained a bunch of fat. Your HbA1c is not any better. And they're like, I don't know what it is. I was like, well, haven't you fixed this before? Nope. Like, to me, that's too dangerous. And I've had this happen over and over again. For 15 years, I've worked with a bunch of coaches who are very heavy-handed and opinionated, but they don't actually know what they're talking about because when you ask them questions, they can't answer them. The only exception to that would probably be Karina and Justin Harris. Justin Harris will tell you when he doesn't know, but Justin Harris does just macros. He doesn't control what food you eat. He doesn't pay attention to micronutrients. It's no training, no cycle per se. He'll answer questions, but it's not like it's a nutrition only. That's why it's called troponin nutrition. And it's very effective if you do it exactly as he did. But at the time, I didn't understand the reasoning behind anything. And it was contradictory to what I understood things to work like. Now, knowing now what I wish I knew then, if I had done it exactly the way he wrote it, it would have worked out better. Now, I know what you're saying is you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you've proved yourself wrong. You've just proved that you should just be coachable. You should just be obedient. You should just do what you're told. And I understand that. In the case of Justin Harris, that would have worked out. However, if I blindly followed the other coaches, in general, I would be dead. So that whole concept that How many times have you heard of, I used to work with this guy and he fucked me up? Or I used to work with this person and they put me on this and this and this, and now my blood work's all fucked up. That never happened to me because I never trusted anyone to know my medicine better than me. So I didn't let them fuck with my shit. I've always done my own cycles. And that's probably why I'm so healthy at 45, is I didn't have someone who got their degree in the back of a Gold's Gym running my medicine. I ran my medicine. In Karina's case, she's simply too busy with her other job. And the clients that we have are entry level, first time competitors who pretty much are women who do exactly what they're told. So it's very easy to coach them because they don't have any muscle. There's nothing to peak. That they don't have, they're in their early 30s or late 20s. They have no health complications to go around. They don't have reams of data and nutrition. They have very little data to analyze. Everything they know about data collection, we taught them. So I've got blood work going back into 2008. So if someone says, well, your ALT are elevated, it's like, that's what it was like when I was natural. No, I don't believe you. It's like, here's my blood work from 2008 when I was natural. This is what my ALT and AST were. I can, and so that cripples someone's confidence because they're trying to prove you wrong to exert dominance so that you obey them. And then you have proof that you actually know what you're doing. And then that makes them wonder if they know what they're doing. And when they have 100 clients, you're one client. Why would they put that much effort towards one client when they have 99 other clients? They can just not accept you and have someone else hire them for the same money. And that's why I brought up the I'll pay more thing. But best way to reduce system inflammation and get out of the constant sympathetic state. Ashwagandha before bed really helped me. I was surprised at how effective it was. I have a really smart client, Elise. She also found the same results. Karina, of course, advocated ashwagandha. I always just thought it was some soy boy hippie shit, so I wouldn't try it. This is another example of when, in Justin Harris and Karina's case, just shutting up and doing what you're told will pay off. And then magnesium baths before bed, that really helps for cooling off, and also CBD, CBN, that will help. TL, which is weird, that's my initials. Hey Todd, what are your thoughts on testosterone's effect on suppressing the immune system? I don't think that's a real thing. I'm sorry about the COVID. Yo, mama, thoughts on DIM for reducing grade 1 gyno as a natural? Could it lower anabolism through GH-IGF-1 since it converts stronger forms of estrogen into weaker ones? I don't know. I mean, how would you get gyno as a natural? And how much GH and IGF-1 could you possibly have if you are natural? I think it's, these are like using a razor to separate grains of sand. It's just not like, I don't know enough about naturals. I've never worked with them. I would think guys coming in at 212 pounds would balloon up to 230, 240 after weigh-ins. I don't know much about weight classes. So I was 177, and then I started my peaking process, and I was looking good at 184, and I just overdid it. I think I overcarbed it. After John just released more material, or no, it was the old material. I just didn't pay close enough attention to the exact percentage. It's 15% of your calorie intake on a daily, whereas I doubled my carbs and kept doubling them. So I went 200 carbs was my base diet, and then I went to 400 carbs for 3 days, did 600 carbs for 1 day, then 400 carbs, and I ballooned out I looked great the day after the 600, went down to 400. You'd think that the next day I'd be lighter and tighter. It went the opposite for some reason. And I can't, and the best we can come up with is the Anadrol fucked up my liver so bad that it ended up causing me to change a bunch of water. And my GGT was like a 95. So it probably was my liver just got shot to shit because I didn't really figure 200 Winstrol and 50 Anadrol is 250 orals. That's a lot of orals if you don't normally use orals. So really, I could just repeat my peak week and figure it out eventually. But everybody, but like Jared was really convincing that he's great at peaking. And if you saw how good he peaked, yeah, Joe Jeffries did his peaking, but Joe Jeffries is in England. Jared's in Texas. So in the end, Jared had to give feedback to Joe Jeffries about what actually was happening as an hour by hour basis for Joe Jeffries to make those calls. I don't have the eyesight to make those calls on myself. I need someone with better eyesight or who will take their finger and pinch the fat on my body and go like this and figure out exactly what's going on. And that doesn't mean just the last week. I want to have someone, even if I have to move to their location so that they can stay there. Like if they live in Texas, I will move to Texas to be close to my coach and compete in Texas. If they live in Florida, I will move to Florida to be in Florida to be close to my coach. I don't have to live in Michigan. I can just get a second place. That it's money's not the problem. The problem is finding someone who I trust to follow through, who knows what they're doing, and who will pay enough attention to make these changes, and who has the experience to and who has the experience of coaching people and peaking them in pro competitions. So like Colton might be smart as fuck. I trust Colton. Colton doesn't, I don't know how much Colton's coached people who are pro bodybuilders and peak them in person for IFBB pro shows who have won. And Steve, I don't know that he's done that either. It's not about having someone tell me what to do. It's about peaking. And I know I keep saying that, but I don't think people really realize peaking to me is the whole last month. And ultimately I got to peak myself because I have to know why I'm doing something before I do it. And one thing you never hear me do, and you were saying I'm a hypocrite, I always, if somebody says to me, I never have said to a client, trust the process or trust me, bro. I always explain why I'm doing something, unless they're just completely incompetent and they're not doing anything they're supposed to do. And I'm pretty much already done with them. And they know that that's the case before. It's not like they didn't get clues. Okay, yo mama, it reduced the size of the glands a bit, but I'm concerned about less IGF-1 conversion because of it. Don't have current blood work, but last time my IGF-1 was 350 plus. E2 is near top of reference range. I don't think. Again, I don't know anything about natural people. So I don't know how you could have gyno as a natural guy. MC, when you went to Turkey for the hair transplant, where else did you end up going? Any tips? I don't understand this question. I went to Turkey for the hair transplant. I didn't go anywhere else. What do you mean? Oh, like where did I go? So I went to, so it's in Istanbul, and I hired one of the locals to be a tour guide and just take me around. I wanted to see Hagia Sophia, and I saw the Blue Mosque, and I had a list of food from Roman Fritz that I should try, and I showed the list to my guide, and he took me places. So I got like a kofta kebab, which is like the beef one. I got the lamb kebab, of course. I got pide. There is the one that starts with an L, Lakshmi, I think it's called. But there's a cool Turkish place right here that has this really good Turkish food. And I actually had Turkish food today for vocation, not hair transplant. Yeah, I got you now. All right. I've never used Ment. I don't really have any opinions about it. From my understanding, it's just a big ball of side effects. And if you run more than 100 milligrams, it can fall apart. I also, regarding a consult for insulin, Scott Stevenson seems very knowledgeable and actually cites studies in his responses. Yeah, I thought about that, about Scott on the basically, I'm going to call Phil Viz tomorrow, and because Phil seems to know a lot about it. And that's pretty much how I'm just going to go about this going forward until I can find someone like Dominic Cusa lives a mile from me, and I've known him for years, and I'd like to work with him. Last time I asked him if he could work with me, he was just like, I just don't have the time. And I think the part of the thing is, and then I think a lot of people don't realize is my expectations for the coaching relationship are going to be like a Neil Hill, Flex Lewis type relationship. I want, and I'm pretty sure it creeps people out when you're like I will move to where you are. I will train with you in person and pay you for training. I will, the things that Chris Cormier does with Breon, the things that, what's his name, Dennis James did with Big Ramy. Like, I will move to where you are. I don't expect to live on your couch. I will rent a separate home, and I will, but I want to have a lot of access for that last month to get me ready for the show. And because I want to do my best. It's not a means thing. I'm not of limited means. And to find someone who has the time and can pay that level of attention, who knows how to peak someone for professional bodybuilding shows, who isn't going to try to force me to do dangerous shit with drugs, or isn't going to try to force me to use cycles, which I've already tried and were unsuccessful, who's going to leave me alone with my gear. I'm happy to talk to them about it, and I'm happy to try out their ideas. But if they're like, just trust me, bro, test and EQ is the only way to go. All the pros are doing it. You're not big because you don't use test and EQ. Every time I've caved to that peer pressure, one, it didn't work, and two, I got some massive side effects. If I didn't listen to other people, I never would have needed the gyno surgery and I never would have needed the hair transplant. That my conclusion is the more I've tried other people's approach towards gear, the worse the results have gotten. Every time I've ever listened to someone, it backfires when it comes to gear. And everyone wants to force that. They can't figure out why you're not growing, so then they always resort to your gear is different than what I would do. It must be the gear, which makes me think that the only thing these coaches do is they have cookie cutter training, cookie cutter diets, and cookie cutter gear protocols. And the ones with great genes are the ones that you find out about. Out of the 400 people they have 2 guys that make it to the Olympia. And then you think, oh, I want to look like that. I'm going to hire that guy. And they're not actually any good. They just, once they had a genetic freak, they doubled down on their attention to that genetic freak. And that's how they do so well. In the case with Stefan, he's got a ton of people that are extremely well peaked. And that's why I want to work with him. And he went to medical school. And he listens to black metal. And he's neurodivergent. So I figured of all the coaches we have the most in common, it would be an easy relationship. With Chris, me and Chris see eye to eye on everything. He's done J3U. So, it'd be really easy to communicate with him. With Jared Feather, he's part of Renaissance Periodization. So me and him see eye to eye completely about training. And he works with Joe Jeffries. And Joe Jeffries pretty much has identical views as John Jewett. So I know that me and Jared would see eye to eye on gear, eye to eye on training. I'm open-minded about nutrition. I'm open-minded about training, and I'll try new things with gear. But what I don't want to have happen is where someone's like, oh my God, that's so much, 3 grams. You can't use more than 2 grams. Like, obviously, there's genetic variability. Not everyone needs 2 grams, and some people need more. So to have just arbitrary level, like if you use more than 2 grams, I won't work with you. And I even said to one of them, I'm like, hey, I'll use whatever you say. I don't care. And he's like, well, we have different philosophy. It's like, I don't care. I want to work with you. I will try it your way. I'll do whatever you say. And he still didn't want to work with me. It's because, to me, either I'm too much of a liability because of my age, or I'm not talented enough to be worth his time, which I think is a big thing. All right. Question. I watched your video on Winstrol. Late, of course. Why was in the back in the 1980s or 90s? Sprinters using Winstrol. I don't know, and I don't care. This ain't a sprinting channel. This is a bodybuilding channel. No one gives a fuck about sprinters. Does the A1C normally go down when you are regaining weight post-contest? Or is the DMZ? Yeah, That's what I don't understand is I've never seen anybody have a HbA1c go up in prep. I've certainly never had or seen someone have a 6.1 before. So for me to have a 6.1 is really concerning, which partly is why I think people are rejecting me for coaching is that I have the 95 GGT and the 6.1 HbA1c is so scary for a coach. Like you had a 600 blood glucose and a 6.1 HbA1c 2 days after the show. Nobody wants to work with that. To be fair, I talked to Justin Jacoby and he said he would. So it's not so much that, and you're like, well, you said no one wants to work with you. It's like, I'm not going to jump into a major relationship like that. Remember, hiring a coach is like getting married. And if you're just like, I'm a fat pig and I want to lose 50 pounds, but you really have 100 pounds to lose. And I think Masterons and AI, if you're that ignorant, any coach will do. Anybody will protect you from yourself. I mean, sure, there are bad coaches, but there's plenty. But if you're a professional bodybuilder and this is your entire life, and there's only one person in your life that's going to matter, that's your coach, then you have a circle of 0 and you're going to have a circle of 1. You want to be picky about who you choose. And then the other thing is, I don't want to damage relationships with friendships. Like, which might be part of why Karina doesn't want to work with me, is that she has to work with me as a business partner. She doesn't want to also be my coach. H10 Tech Mock. What's your take on the daily fiber intake? How much per? So I did this once. I think it's 14 grams of fiber per 1,000. But for some reason, yeah. So I was like, at 2,000 calories a day, it's about 28 grams. For 3,000 calories a day, it's like 42 grams. I mean, I don't think you really have to track it. What's your digestion like? And if your poop is hard enough, or if you're having indigestion, increase your vegetables at every meal. And then keep with, rather than adding some type of supplement, just add vegetables, peas and carrots, and eventually your poop will be firmer, and when you wipe, it'll be clean. And then if it's too constipated, you might need more water and more fat. Why we need progressive stimulus to build new muscle tissue in terms of training? Okay, that's a good question. So why progressive overload? Why wouldn't 200 pounds for 10 reps forever keep growing new muscle? Because your body doesn't need more muscle to move that 200 pounds. Once, let's say it's failure, and then you train for a while, and then you're 1 rep in reserve with 200 pounds for 10 reps. Then you train for a couple more weeks, and now you're 2 reps in reserve. Eventually, you're going to be so far away from failure, there's no more stimulation. At that point, you would need more. So Israel says, Jared teases me because I'm always far from failure. But the thing is, sure, maybe I do have 2, 3, even 4 reps in reserve, but I'm getting a pump and I'm sore and I'm growing. So that's enough. I can just add more sets. I don't have to add more intensity. And he's right. So that's the reason is eventually the training's so easy, you have no effective reps. Now, maybe your question's deeper than that. I'm sorry if it is, and I didn't understand. L-theanine and astronaut is night-night. Oh, wow, we're all the way back there. How far back am I? I'm 20 minutes behind. Okay. Ray Mamo, here we go again. Thoughts on mini GH blasts to break plateaus rather than staying on long-term for classic guys. Yeah, Phil Viz said that in the podcast with Sebastian Berg. I think it's a great idea. So the idea is, for those who didn't see it, it's like, let's say Phil doesn't believe in using GH for physique guys because he wants to keep their waist small, because he believes in the idea that the GH directly or indirectly or through multiple mechanisms causes GH gut. I don't completely agree with this. I don't disagree with it, but I think most of GH gut has to do with a lack of abdominal muscle control and due to overfeeding to grow. So, and there's lots of people, well, I shouldn't say lots of people, but so the idea is that you can use GH in higher doses. I think Phil said either use 6 units or don't use it at all in general. And you do, and only use, he only likes pharma grade. So 6 units of pharma grade, and for a short period of time, maybe 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And the idea is to drive up the hyperplasia, basically satellite cell migration, so that you can get new growth of new tissue without constantly force feeding yourself. That during the periods where you're taking a bunch of GH, because of the theoretical insulin resistance that it causes, you wouldn't be trying to eat to grow with hypertrophy at that point. So this would be at the end of a phase, of a growth phase where you've plateaued and you've already accumulated enough body fat to where even if you were in a slight deficit, you still have enough reserve adipose tissue and body fat that you could be in a slight deficit, and your body will take from your body fat to make up for the difference. So you can still be anabolic in this phase, but that's not even the point of this phase. The point of this phase is to eat less, to take pressure off your pancreas, to take pressure off your intestines, to give yourself a digestive break, and you're going to concomitantly blast GH. Blast he uses by 6 to 8 units of farm grade. He liked genotropin, I believe. This drives up hyperplasia. And then you stop using the GH, switch back to an anabolic and food-driven growth phase with insulin as per his directions. And this will drive up hypertrophy in the cells you just caused to be created. Now, my understanding is just like how sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar hypertrophy are interrelated. You can't train for sarcoplasm, you can't train for myofibrillar, that theory is somewhat false. That it might be sequential, that first there's sarcoplasmic growth, the rebound phase, and then there's the myofibrillar growth, the cementing in the gains phase. That the point is that you can't really control when it happens. My understanding is the GH, the hyperplasia thing takes time. That satellite cell migration isn't like a bolus. You don't get all the satellite cell migration overnight. And just because you donated the satellite cells doesn't mean that they're not going to replicate right away. But I think in theory, if he's right, if you spent January and February blasting GH and caused a bunch of nucleuses to get donated from satellite cells into the myocytes, then you spent March and April using high carb, high insulin, high volume training to cause as much cell swellage as possible so that you had hypertrophy occur at the muscle cells. That's how you could use it to bust through plateaus at the end of the growth phase without it permanently disfiguring your waist. I hope I answered your question, Ray. That was a very complicated concept that I think is over the head of just about everybody. Is phasmatism really all just meat? My understanding is yes, it is. Because usually ectomorphs, so with the ectomorph is someone whose ectoderm developed first. The notochord develops from the ectoderm, and the notochord eventually turns into the central nervous system. So if someone's an ectomorph, they're also going to have a hyper-focused mind. You don't need very slow, sluggish ectomorphs mentally. Mentally, they tend to be quick-witted. Yes, I think that the orals caused NAF, non-fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I was already dealing with that to a limited extent I think Roman had the theory that because I hadn't dieted in 3 years, that the extreme type of diet I was doing was giving me that problem because my GGT was 65 a month out from the show, but my HbA1c was only 5.3, but my insulin was 11. And I started taking glutathione, sublingual, NAC, Tudka. I never had to do anything for my liver because my liver was always healthy. So I started blasting a ton of liver stuff and I went off of the Anavar and I assumed that it would take care of, but apparently not so much because I think that the orals really fucked my liver because it was 95 the week after the show and my HbA1c was a 6.1. So in 15 years of bodybuilding, my blood work was the absolute worst I've ever seen after the Texas Pro this year. That's why I pulled after talking to Paul and Karina. Both of them said I should just pull out of the whole season. And that's why it was important for me at that time to find a coach because my confidence was wrecked. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I've been doing this all this time. Everything's been fine. Why is this wrong? I need to have somebody who I can bounce ideas off of because Karina's too busy. And like, although Paul has great wisdom, I wasn't getting a deeper scientific explanation as to the medical direct cause of the blood glucose, the insulin resistance, the pancreatic insufficiency, the high HbA1c, the GGT. None of it made much sense. So Chris Tuttle seemed to be the most reasonable choice because he was working in a hospital as a registered dietitian. He knew his shit. And then after 3 weeks, I fixed most of it myself. And then Chris changed his mind. Now in this situation, I'm 35 pounds heavier. My blood work has been getting better with what I'm doing. I no longer feel pressured to need a coach for health reasons or diet. I think not that I'm some expert in nutrition, but I think that I pulled it together pretty well. And I fixed things as best I could. Thanks for talking about the coaching and insights. It's Deep Bodybuilding Nerd. I'm here for it. Okay. Let's see here. I don't know how much about competing, how close to weight caps are successful at competitors, NPC classics, typically. Well, I'm not NPC, I'm IFBB, but in regards to you, I don't think weight caps really matter that much for classic or bodybuilding. Sean Clarita is with 193, and Rough Diesel is 171. So Rough Diesel is 16 pounds away from his weight cap. Sean's 20 pounds away from his weight cap. So there's lots of people, but I was 35 pounds away from my weight cap. And even after I put a bunch of water in me to try to fill up and it looked like shit. I mean, it didn't look like shit. It looked worse. That going from 177 to 184 was an improvement. Going from 184 to 191 looked like an improvement at the gym with a pump, but on stage it did not look good. So I was still drastically underweight for classic because I'm 182 is my cutoff for classic. That's 30 pounds away, and I can make that easy. I can make 177. So it makes little sense to do 212 if I'm that far away from the classic cutoff. And a lot of people are like, well, you don't have a classic physique. I do when I'm 177, just not when I'm 191. That you saw me bloated and spilled over from trying to be as full as fuck. You didn't see me when I was stripped to the bone. If you go to my Instagram and scroll back to like the June 30th posing where I've got veins on my glutes, that's what I look like classic. And it looks good enough for classic. Closer to the ideal for classic than the 212. In regards to you, Brandon, I think you definitely have a classic physique. All right, Ray. Should low DHEA and progesterone be treated? Everyone keeps asking me about those two. It's incredible. Where is this coming from? Did Steve just do a video that's terrified everyone into the DHEA and progesterone? Or, oh, yeah, I just don't get it. I think that if you're below reference range, taking DHEA might help. I've heard from people it helps with mental acuity. I didn't notice a difference. If your mama had natural gyno, then he needs BW, probably an AI prescription or a Relox protocol. But Josh, if he gets those things, he's not natural anymore. That's why I always thought natural was dumb. It's like, well, if I drive a car to work, that's too much of a carbon footprint. So I'm going to use a rickshaw. And it's like, well, if you use a rickshaw, are you going to use shoes? Because the rubber of the soles of the shoes has a carbon footprint. Like, where do you draw the line as to what's the carbon footprint? Likewise, where do you draw the line as to what natural? Dr. Todd, how about you consider Chad Nichols? Fuck no. No, Chad Nichols. No. I want someone who's going to, no, Chad Nichols. He literally is attributed for killing like 30 people. No way. Who is Neil Hill and Flex Lewis? Yeah. All right. Is your coach client pitch the same as your dating pitch? I don't know what my dating pitch is. All right. Viking, thoughts on using metformin to lose fat? I don't really have thoughts on metformin for losing fat. If someone's insulin resistant, they should use metformin to help with that. 50 milligrams of D-ball, trust me, bro. Yeah. Mr. Gerbil, big man, I get a lot of water retention in my feet with HGH. Is there a way to get rid of it while staying on HGH? Or should I just take a little break till it goes away? Just lower your dose, man. I don't understand why people have this binary thing like, oh, I'm running this much GH and I've got a side effect. I should either quit or stay on it. It's like, lower it. Roll back the dose until you find a good dose. Was there a specific cycle or compound the coach recommended that caused your hair to get damaged? Or do you think it was just cumulative use? What it is I keep running the same thing. They're like, fuck it, man. I shaved my head. You should shave your head too. It's just like they've given up on, if you're going to do classic, you have to have hair. And if you're too small for 212, then you got to do classic. So I'm not giving up my fucking hair for any coach. And to the point, it was, I think testosterone. Testosterone is the number one cause of hair loss because of the DHT conversion. You went without testosterone for years. Hey, when you did Nandrolone only or Nandrolone in general, do you feel any stronger in your joints? I keep hearing it's good for joints, but compared to 5-AUGH, I've never noticed that anything is good or bad for joints. See you at 6 Thursday. All right, buddy. Peace out. Did you get fasting insulin checked? It was 6.1 in prep. No. My fasting insulin was 11 in prep. My HbA1c was 5.3 in prep. After prep, after I got back from Texas, I got my blood work done. My HbA1c was 6.1. My fasting insulin was 6. And my fasting glucose was 300, which tells me at some point my pancreas just quit because I wasn't making very much insulin. And whatever I was making wasn't able to control my blood glucose. And then the blood glucose was causing my HbA1c to go through the roof. So I didn't give myself type 2 diabetes. I didn't have insulin resistance. I gave myself type 1 diabetes and prep. Do you think good gut health promotes better metabolism? Yes, but that's really vague. Dr. Todd, you are doing community service by imparting priceless knowledge for 0 customer costs. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Oh, my God. Should I drink an intra-workout Willist boxing to avoid catabolism? Yes. I do boxing for fun, but scared of losing muscle. Yes, definitely do an intra-workout. Use battle mead. All right. Yo, mama, to answer your question about how I got gyno as a natty, it was pubertal, and I found out with 14. Didn't go away over time. Got them bitch titty genetics. I knew it was going to be something dumb like this. Dude, if you have gyno, then taking dim isn't going to make your gyno go away. Why is it always these people that drop the most important clue last? Like if you, it's like they're in denial that they've got gyno before any of this shit started. Like the most important detail, like I have permanent gyno from when I was a child. Like obviously, the nothing you do is going to change that short of having it cut out. Have a high day today. Any ideas for fat-free carb sources today, or should I? I just shot a video about this. Where it was low carb variants off of. Oh man, I wish I could. So, oh man, I don't want to go down this again. I don't even know what time it is there. It's 10:30, so whatever you're going to do is probably closed. But what I do now on my high carb days is I roll my chicken tenderloins in gluten-free panko breadcrumbs, and then I air fry them, and then it basically turns chicken and rice into like the equivalent of like General Tso's chicken. Or I can do that with spaghetti and make chicken parmesan with fat-free cheese. Or I can, for them, instead of adding ice cream, not that I'm an ice cream eater, but for some reason post show I had some every day. It was like for a couple of weeks. No, it wasn't every day. It just seemed like it because I hadn't had dairy in years, and I started using digestive enzymes, and I was able to actually eat food I haven't been able to eat in like half a decade or ever. Like I have better digestion now than I've ever had in my life, thanks to these digestive enzymes, including eating food I've never really eaten. Anyway, so Okiosis 000 Greek yogurt basically is the closest you can get to ice cream with that's fat free. Is an intra-workout drink 20 carbs enough to drive L-carnitine pre-workout? You don't. Okay, so the L-carnitine thing is bullshit. L-carnitine, you do need carbs with it, but it doesn't work when you shoot it. It has to build up in your system over weeks and months. If you use 3 IU GH sub Q every night for GR whatever, will you continue to see results over a decade, or does it plateau a couple years in? No, there's no plateau. Do you think walking pod across with standing desk is a great idea for those with? So yes. Why do you rarely see bodybuilders eat fruit? Because they don't listen to Chris Tuttle. He and every other nutritionist advocates fruit for bodybuilding. The fruit has a number of benefits. I just don't like it. Andrew Barry might accept you even. I couldn't get a consult with AJ Sims. He didn't return my call. He's friends with what's his name? He's one of the people that refused to come on the podcast if I was on. That's my supposition. Because I tried to contact AJ Sims before the shows to say, hey, I've got three back-to-back shows. How do I handle the intra show phase, and how do I peak for all three shows? I was going to hire him to help me, but he wouldn't return my. He wouldn't let me even get a consult with him. Steve Wilson, could the elevated HbA1c just be because of altered hemoglobin turnover? Maybe. I don't know enough about this. Do tell. Liver stress from orals could just have disrupted maturation of erythrocytes and increased hemolysis, which makes sense. I just don't understand it. One thing I do know, and I didn't mention it in this, but I mentioned it in a previous podcast. Previous video I shot today. There's some things about blood work that I just think is bullshit. And HbA1c is one of those things that I think is partially bullshit. In the general sedentary population, sure, you can deduce but Amy, who's also on the podcast with the guys, she said that with the oxidative stress that you're under, I wouldn't be surprised for HbA1c to be falsely elevated. And I recently talked to her again about it. I was like, can you go into that a little bit more? Because I don't really understand what is the mechanism of glycosylated hemoglobin being elevated in bodybuilders with oxidative stress. And she's like, I don't know, but I know what happens. And I remember Karina, I had said that to her. She's like, saying this person's pre-diabetic, their HbA1c says so. I was like, I don't give a fuck what the HbA1c says. I don't believe it. That's a red herring. Too many bodybuilders have perfectly normal glucose and elevated HbA1c for it to be a one-to-one relationship that it is with the normal population. And she eventually talked to a hematologist who said in bodybuilders, because they've got, it was something like more or larger red blood cells than the regular population, they have elevated HbA1c just because there's more to be glycosylated. And so the answer was enough for her to feel that my intuition was right, but the explanation I got third hand or second hand wasn't enough for me to visually see the molecular structure in my head and see the actual chain of events. And if I can't see the molecular biochemistry taking place, I don't actually know it. I just know that there was an explanation for why bodybuilders would have falsely elevated, just like the creatinine was easy, right? Why does all bodybuilders have elevated creatinine? Because you're breaking down muscle tissue, so it's the creatine or creatine phosphate leaks into the bloodstream, and so the creatinine levels are higher. That you eat more protein, so you're breaking down the protein that you eat, so those muscle cells are going to release creatinine into the bloodstream. When I stopped training to failure and I started leaving one rep in the tank, my creatinine went down from like a 1.3 to like a 0.96. Did I cure kidney disease by adopting a 1 RIR? No. But instead of going beyond failure, I stopped one rep shy of failure. I was having less muscle damage. I was less sore, less beaten up, and my creatinine got better. I would definitely watch a worst blood work ever video and steps you took. Okay, well, the thing was I wanted to fix it before I went public with it. This is the first time I've ever mentioned it because this is the first time my blood work's been relatively good. I'm going to go tomorrow again and get it looked at, because one thing people don't understand is the lag time. Like HbA1c stays elevated for 120 days. So I could have completely normal everything, but my HbA1c is going to be completely high. Same thing with GGT. GGT's got a 14-day half-life. So after a couple weeks, it went from 95 to 85. That tells me that whatever was wrong is less wrong. That Chris and a bunch of other people agreed that 95 is probably from the overdosing on the orals. Even though it was only 4 days, there was enough obliteration to my liver from those orals in that 4 days that I had really elevated GGT. And again, GGT can be falsely elevated from oxidation. It doesn't necessarily, because it has to do with glutathione turnover. Consuming glutathione and TUDCA helps, but it's not going to show up with the blood work right away. That the GGT is going to stay elevated long after the problem's cured. The things that are immediate are things like fasting blood glucose, blood levels of insulin, but I don't know how long cystatin C's half-life is. HbA1c, it takes it's probably a 60-day half-life for HbA1c. Never trained abs before. If I start running at newbie games, answer is yes. What are your drug choices when keeping to keep your hair? Just don't use test. Your hair's fine. The questions like this shows a fundamental lack of understanding. You should definitely watch the videos that I produce that aren't the lives. Do you own a Ninja Creamy? No, but I don't really fuck with well, it's funny, I don't fuck with dairy, but I'm talking about Okios or whatever. What I find was whey isolate or concentrate causes mucus production more so than with what's it called? Greek yogurt. The DIM did shrink the glands, but yes, I know. I've been looking into surgery too. Did you get yours done yet? Yes, I did get the gyno surgery. If so, are you willing to the doctor who did it So the doctor did not remove the entire gland. And so that's why I don't give her name out. Ninja Creamy is phenomenal, I'm not going to lie. Okay. I know John has one and Karina has one too. The surgeons I've gone to were clearly not knowledgeable. I know it all. Right. Yeah. It's crazy. They keep calling it breast reduction and liposuction. But motherfucker, I don't need liposuction. I need the breast gland removed. This was a woman who said that she was an expert in male bodybuilders. When she saw me with my shirt off, she was like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Your abs." And I was like, "This is off season. This is not good." And she's like, "I've never seen anyone like this before." I was like, "I thought you said you specialize in bodybuilders." She's like, "I do." I'm like, "Do they have one of these?" And I held up my card. And she's like, "Well, I don't, what's that?" And I'm like, "This is the card you get if you are a bodybuilder. If you don't have this, you're not a bodybuilder." And she's like, "Oh, no, no one had a card." I'm like, "So they weren't really bodybuilders. They're just people who go to the gym and fuck around." And she's like, "I guess so." It's like, and I told her, I was like, she said, "I've never seen anyone heal this fast. You're like the bionic man." I was like, "I said I use BPC and TB500." And she's like, "I don't know what those are." I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with this world? How are you a surgeon and you don't know that there are drugs that heal wounds?" Like, not impressed. Do all AAS grow muscle at the same rate? Phil disagrees. If you saw, yeah, I saw the podcast. Phil disagrees, and he has no respect for me and anyone else who says otherwise. But, and his argument is that Tren grows more muscle than testosterone because you're stronger. Okay. I feel that the longer you've been in the game, the harder it is to change your mind. That I understand his point of view. I also know that another point of view is it's total anabolic load that grows more tissue. I know that there are people that disagree with that, and there's people who agree with that. I don't, I think that it makes more sense to use the safest drugs with the least amount of side effects. And once you figure out what drugs are good for you, you can escalate those drugs to get the results you want. I think it's stupid to think that if I should use the most powerful drugs I can with the most side effects and suffer through the side effects just because my coach says so. So we have a fundamental difference of opinion about how to use gear then. Because I think you should find the drugs you tolerate best and use them. And it doesn't matter whether something's stronger or not. That Masteron is safest, and that's the one I would lean on. Is there really any concern in having superload SUG? I don't see there being a problem. If L-carnitine has to be built up in your system for weeks, months, does it matter when you shoot it? No. Just pushing 600 ED for about a month, fasted cardio and rest days, training days. Yep, that's what I did. I used Chase's shit, ran a bottle. That's a great gyno doc. Tori, thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. All right, I finally caught up. We're pretty much down to Yo Mama and Ray Mama at this point. Phil is on drugs. He looks like Christian Bale in the movie The Fighter, where he plays a crackhead. All right, well, I'm not going to say anything negative about Phil. I'm going to try to talk to him tomorrow on the phone and see if he has some insight. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what he's going to say, that if your HbA1c is over 5.3, you need to go on a mini cut. And it's like, the problem is I came off of a 24-week cut and had veins on my ass. That's not, insulin resistance is not why I have an elevated HbA1c. Like, let me see here. Oh, if this is, so this does not look as good as it did pre-show. So I don't think I'm obese. I don't know how much a mini cut's going to help. I'm starving hungry all day. He knows everything, so you should be good. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to have to run to the bathroom. I think my point is that I'm not obese, so I don't know why I'd have to mini cut to lower my insulin resistance to lower my HbA1c. I don't think that's the mechanism of the elevated HbA1c. I think that it's an artifact of something else. It's a falsely elevated HbA1c. Why the fuck are your abs so blocky? Because I'm full of food. When I was 177, they weren't blocky. Now that I'm 220, a month later, I've gained 43 pounds or something in a month. This is what I look like. How would you have a cool? Oh, I gotta go pee. Yeah, Ray. So if you want to see what my abs look like when they're not blocky, go to my Instagram, and the top left picture that I have pinned there is what my abs look like when I'm all dialed in. And I don't know if you can see this. Oh, I don't know why. Oh, maybe I can turn the brightness down. There. That's not blocky, but that was 43 pounds ago. So I look like this at 220, and that's why people say, "Oh, you're definitely not classic. You're definitely 212." But that's what I look like dieted down. Which to me looks classic. Now, I'm not fat, I still have abs, so I don't think that I should have insulin resistance, but let's see. I can pretty much look in the mirror and guess my A1C. Okay, you got a good point. What I'm That's a creative application. I just wouldn't sleep on the trend. I also heard him saying about using um, orals on weak point days. I used to use D-Bol on arm days to get better pumps and inject my arms with IGF-1 DES, and the pumps were so extreme. Yeah, so thanks, man. Because Ray, I don't know if you meant it that way, but basically, when you said, "Why are your abs so blocky?" what I heard was you say, "Why is your body so fucking gross, you Ninja Turtle pig?" Which I know isn't what you said, but blocky abs are definitely like the kiss of death in bodybuilding. That's why I felt the need to show that picture, is for me to lift my shirt after gaining 45 pounds in 1 month. Imagine if a woman went from like the cover of a Sports Illustrated. Not that girls are on covers of Sports Illustrated anymore, but you get my point. And then she's 9 months pregnant 1 month later. Think about how low her self esteem would be. That's how bad I feel about myself that I'm wearing a Final Fantasy tent. But I wanted to, I know cognitively I'm not fat. So that's why I wanted to show that there's really no reason for me to mini cut to get my HbA1c down, because I'm not that fat. I have elastic skin on my abs. Is creatine HCl better than monohydrate for water retention? To my knowledge, no. Do not take HCl. Yeah. I can damage your tooth enamel. Okay, cool. I didn't know that. Thanks, Tom. No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant as just so thick, very impressive. All right, cool. See, that's the thing is when someone has an insecurity, they hear insults where it may not be an insult. That's why I tried not to emotionally react to what you said. I'm better about it than I was when I was younger. Uh, I didn't know about that. That's a good point, Tom. 45 pounds of muscle, bro. Trust me. Well, it's something. I mean, I definitely have a little bit of lower back fat, and but I still have cuts here through. It's weird. It's like I've got cuts right here through the pec behind the nipple, but then there's still the loose skin that went away when I was dieted down. That's now back because, of course, my estrogen. I had to reset my estrogen in order to reset my insulin sensitivity. Because when I brought my estrogen down from 100 to 30, everything was fine. From 30 all the way to 8, everything was fine. From 8 to 5, there was no change. But then when I get the blood work back, my HbA1c went from a 5.3 to a 6.1. So since estrogen works through the estrogen receptor alpha to turn up estrogen sensitivity, I assumed the reason why my HbA1c was so high was because my estrogen was so low. I was insulin resistant. So I allowed my estrogen to creep back up to 61, and I put a lot of fat on around my nipples. That's frustrating. What was your first cycle? 200 milligrams of EQ a week. Best way to measure insulin sensitivity. Fasted glucose with fasted insulin. If your fasted glucose is under 80 and your fasted insulin is under 5, then you slept 8 hours and was fasted and there's no other mitigating circumstances, then you probably have very good um, insulin sensitivity. If your insulin's over 5, chances are you have insulin resistance. So I know what you're saying, but 6 is over 5. Right, but 6 isn't very much over 5. And I had used a little bit of insulin the night before. I was using Lantus, 5 units of Lantus before bed. I'm on week 3 of daily test GH injections with half-inch insulin pen. I tried my tricep to give the delta rest. I didn't feel a lump. I don't feel a lump, but it's sore. Did I do it wrong? Nope. Do you run DAA on cycle always? This product, the Thor's Hammer, uses sodium D-aspartate, not D-aspartic acid. There's a huge difference that no one knows, not even the researchers. That they don't. It's like this movie Medicine Man with Sean Connery from like '91, where they thought that there was some type of fruit that was curing a disease, but they couldn't represent the results. But it turned out it was the leaf that they had the fruit sitting on the first time, and then they hadn't used the leaf as a plate each additional time until the end of the movie. They figure out it's the leaf. The same thing with this is the reason why there's conflicting data about D-aspartic acid is the D-aspartic acid isn't what works. It's sodium D-aspartate. It's conjugate base that works. And some of the experiments use the conjugate base, and some of the experiments use the acid because it shouldn't make a difference, but apparently it does. Medicine Man was terrible. I love that Josh knows everything. Dude, I need to get a shirt made that says Josh knows. Josh knows everything. Josh knows everything. Oh, man. All right. How late is it? 11:06. What are we, like 2 hours in? Yeah, we're like 2 hours in. Oh, all right. So, what picture you looked at that said my back has abs? I don't even have any back shots up on this. So you must have dug deep in here to find a back shot. I don't see any back shots in here. Oh, right here. Okay. That one. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Come on, you can do it. Let's see. Oh, have you heard of OLE Christian Vaga? I think you would like him. He's a mass monster and wicked smart. No, I've never heard of him. I like the one where Sean Connery went primal ape. I don't remember what that one was. Abs back on 30th July post pin. Wait. This is July 9th. Not that one. July 29th. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the best my glutes looked was this posing routine from July 30th, where you actually can see the veins on my butt. And there's like a lot of them too. And I didn't know it looked that good at the time. I'm one of those guys who I think I look fat the whole prep, no matter what. What do you think about Mike Mentzer's training? I think that it was a scam invented by Arthur Jones to sell Nautilus equipment. If you're super strong, and the amount of fatigue you accumulate from 1 or 2 sets is so high, low volume training is the only option. What's the best way to use HGH? Thanks. It depends on what your goal is, but what I do is right now I'm using 2 units fasted, 6 units pre-training, and 6 units before bed. Any more than that, I don't get any benefit out of it. It's just more money. It'll benefit in fat loss if you have the money for it, but to me that's the best way. Please try to get OLE Kristen Vega to do a podcast with you. I'm sure he would be down. Why don't you set it up, man? Why don't you create like a little group thing on Instagram and introduce us? Oh, it was Instinct with Anthony Hopkins. That's right. He joined the ape tribe, which was later attacked and ate a lot of the poachers. I don't know why, but I hate poaching. I mean, like, I understand why, because you're killing animals, but when you look at it from the poacher's point of view, they need the money to feed their family. It's not like they're like getting hookers and cocaine money with the elephant tusks and the gorilla hands, and that it's the people. I understand it's mostly China that's buying like the rhinoceros horns and stuff like that. So if you don't create the demand, they won't provide the supply. So the people who purchase those things are just as guilty as the people executing the evil act. How long are you training sessions usually when building muscle mass? I don't know. As long as they take. I usually am in the gym for about 2 hours. Now, how much of it's actual hardcore training? When I was in prep, I was paying more attention to that. I think it was like 75 minutes for a leg day was, first set to last set. And right now I'm at the same volume, so it's probably very similar. Get a little back pain using the pendulum squat from a butt link. No, you should just fix your shit. Like get some heel wedges or use squat shoes or put Versa lifts in your squat shoes. Move your feet up the platform, move your feet wider. The belt's not going to change if your heels come up. Hey, Todd, I just want to say thank you for the information you put out on a constant basis. Welcome, bud. All right, poaching makes for the best eggs. Okay, like what the fuck? Isn't poaching like when you like crack the egg and drop it in the ramen, and then the heat of the soup just turns the egg into like a solid? Ray Mamo, ideal potassium and sodium ratio for minimalist water retention. It's funny, you should ask that. So I'm looking at my Fenris Fury, and I have 600 milligrams of sodium and 100 milligram of potassium, which some people might disagree with. I think Karina says the best ratio is a 4-to-1 ratio. I think that she likes 300 milligrams pre-training to 75. But I made mine under the assumption that because she overestimates the general consumer's intellect level. My experience is most people's nutrition is fucking horrible. So they're not staying on top of their sodium intake throughout the day. So I would rather overdo it with the sodium. And if they only wanted 300 milligrams of sodium, they could do 1 scoop and not 2. Favorite drugs for when in the bedroom? I don't know. I don't really take drugs for that. Our characters are scams. What is? I don't understand what goes. Ray, you're so weird with these like one question after another every minute that have nothing to do with each other. Our chiropractor scams. I guess it depends on the chiropractor and if you need adjustments or not. How would you approach Humalog use for the first time user? Um, I covered that in this. I also just shot 2 videos about this. The first video was 4 Horsemen of the Anabocalypse, which will be out next week. And then the follow-up video is low-fat options for high carb day. Bottom line is, Humalog is really dangerous, and most people aren't smart enough to use it safely or responsibly. If someone had a gun to my head and forced me to give them the first step would be wait till you're home and you're not going out for the rest of the night. Post workout, check your blood sugar. This is actually straight out of Phil Viz's playbook. Is check your blood sugar and shoot enough Humalog to lower your blood glucose to 90. Now, of course, you could kill yourself if you don't know what you're doing. So the intelligent, more reasonable approach is shoot 1 unit and see within a half an hour how much did it lower your blood glucose. Then the next workout, shoot 2 units. Then the next workout, shoot 3 units. And for example, last night I was at 118. I shot 10 because that's my normal amount post workout. And it dropped me all the way into the 70s. And then I was so ravenous, I overate and it shot up to 138 and it didn't come down for like 4 or 5 hours. So that was too much. Now I know for sure the correct amount is 5 units post workout. That way it would have brought it to 90 and then I could have eaten. I wouldn't have overeaten. And then I would be able to be ready to eat again in 3 or 4 hours. The point is you want to eat every 4 hours to stimulate a muscle synthesis pathway. If you overeat, the extra calories go towards fat storage, not towards muscle synthesis. This isn't a hard and fast rule. Like some people might be able to get away with more than others, blah, 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 blah. But for you, the smart thing to do is to use your glucometer and keep track of your blood sugar throughout the day and make sure that you're within 3 hours of a meal, you should be back to your pre-meal blood glucose. And that should be somewhere in the 80s. I wish you sold your supplements in Canada stores. I would never sell anything in a store because I don't want to pay someone to do that. That's stupid. You just go to the website and order it, and we will ship it to you, even if you're in Canada. 100-year-old eggs is second in eggs pyramid. I don't get that. Is that a Jurassic Park reference or something? Todd. No, I don't think there's any peptides that help with scar tissue. Scar tissue is made of collagen. Collagen is permanent. Get wrecked. Your opinion is 250, 225 at 10% body fat considered big. Because my family and friends think I'm jacked, lol. But I don't feel big. Well, I mean, you're never going to feel big. You're never going to feel big. All right. Sometimes when I add test oil to my GH water, in instant I get bubbles everywhere. Like when oil. Why would you bother avoiding it? What difference does it make? Can I ask about Master Show you were doing 3 weeks after Texas? Did you do it? Not do it? What happened? I covered that already. This podcast. Basically, my blood work after the orals I used to peak was so bad that Karina and Big Paul suggested I didn't keep competing and I let myself go into a recovery phase. And I'm not someone who listens to people, but I respect the fuck out of Paul and think he's a very wise and smart man. And Karina's literally the smartest person alive. And although I probably could have pushed it, she made a good point. You're probably not healthy enough to peak right. Therefore, like she didn't say it, but the implication was there's a good chance the reason why you didn't peak perfect, that your theory might have been good, but it didn't work, was because your body wasn't healthy enough to survive or to benefit. In other words, on paper, what you did made sense and it should have worked, but it didn't, and your blood work's fucked. Maybe the reason why it didn't work is not because you did something wrong, but because your blood work was already fucked. And therefore, the implication is, and where her real point was, with blood work like this, you're probably not going to be able to make it 3 weeks without making it worse, and or you won't peak right. Ross, great answer. Thank you. I don't know what my question for Ross, what question did Ross ask? What was that, 30 minutes ago? Oh, okay. Okay, he appreciated that. Favorite ab exercise? Joe Bennett covers it. It's basically just the ab mat with a crunch. Or Kuba covers it. It's like the half Bosu ball, knee up to the chin. It's kind of like a rope curl. Also the ab roller. But that's in order of preference. My SFR list from 1 to 4. All right. Do you prefer Pharma GHUs? It's literally like carbon copy other questions from today. I'm notorious for being an advocate of Metatropin specifically, which is my favorite brand of GH. I think it's better than the pharma stuff. That doesn't mean that I think all UGL GH is better or equal to pharma. It's just that I know from lab testing that Metatropin is as good as all the pharma stuff, and I've done extensive research on the lab tests, on blood work, on markers from health, from visual changes, my body weight changes, from switching from 18 Serostim to 18 Metatropin to 18 Serostim to 18 Genotropin to 18 Metatropin. And I spent about $10,000 doing this research. And in the end, not only was the Metatropin as good regarding blood GH, blood IGF-1, lab tested values, every single thing you could use, it actually was better because it had just the right amount of mannitol that you were neither dry nor wet. Serostim, you're wet. Genotropin, you're dry. Metatropin, you're just right. That does not mean that I endorse generic GH. It means Metatropin brand is better, in my opinion, than the expensive pharma grade brands. I have no experience with other. Actually, I do have experience with other generic GHs. They suck. Okay. Have you seen Mike Israel and Fuad debate on food choice importance? You know what? The cheesy poof episode, I didn't watch the cheesy poof episode. I tried to talk to Mike about food and contest prep, and he did. And when my editor saw the video clips, saw the original raw footage, he was like, "I don't think we should include this. It looks like you're irritating him." So we cut that part of the episode out on the advanced discussion with Mike. The advanced discussion hypertrophy with Mike Israetel on this channel. We cut out this me troubleshooting his last prep. This was before this prep. That was I troubleshooted the last prep before this prep to try to figure out how we could fix his water retention. And he humored me, but he didn't seem to enjoy it, according to third party. So it was cut from the raw data exists. We still have the original part of that interview. But ultimately, my understanding is he doesn't eat traditional bodybuilding foods, and that if you're holding water, probably and you can't figure out what it is, chances are the thing you're not doing right is you're not eating bland enough. You're having processed foods. So although a lot of people can get away with non-nutritive sweeteners, a lot of people can get away with seasoning, the way I was brought up, you eat chicken breast and plain oatmeal and nothing else. And you come in dry as fuck that way. But they don't reward dry looks anymore. Do you have a loading protocol for all carnitine injections to take daily? It's so funny. This was already covered this episode. I buy Chase's carnitine. If you want the discount code, it's full R word. And I shoot the whole bottle. Every day I shoot a cc of it. And then I do 1 cc pre-workout. Is that right? I don't know. Does it work? I don't know. Watching your carb cycling for fat loss video, you talk about eating enough carbs to reach glycogen saturation on your high carb days. How do you determine how many carbs are required to do that? I don't know. I think that if you are getting fuller and fuller and fuller, and then you start looking like shit, that's an indicator. Then you went too far, you spilled over. John Jewett says that if your glucose is off the charts, then it might mean that you've spilled over. That's just too complicated of a question for me to snowball. Like, it depends on your insulin resistance, it depends on your insulin sensitivity, it depends on how strong your pancreas is, whether you're using insulin or not. It's a very complicated thing. Basically, trial and error. Like, if on Monday you eat 600 carbs, and that's supposed to be your high carb day, and Tuesday you wake up, you're flat as fuck, and you're lighter, 600 wasn't enough. If you ate 700, you woke up and you're full, but you're the same weight, okay, maybe there is room for more. If you ate 800 and you wake up the next day and you're 2 pounds up and you look like a water balloon, you probably had too much. So 700 in that circumstance would be the right amount. That might change too throughout the whole prep. What is your plan for next shows? Roadmap ahead. What class to compete, where, when? Plan for phases leading up. Yeah, that was covered. That was actually 40 minutes of this live. My plan is to find somebody who will help me get back on track as far as organ health goes. If I need to, it's taking me so long to find someone who will take my money that I've almost fixed it on myself. Because I was like, all right, well, I thought I knew what I was doing, and now I'm dying on this blood work. So maybe I need a second opinion, and I haven't been able to find anybody who will take me on as a client. So, and people are like, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this? Believe me, I don't need suggestions as to who to hire. I'm saying the people I want to hire don't want my money. So my point is, if and when I find someone who's willing to be a coach and who fits my criteria of coaching, then we will decide together, am I better suited for 212 or for classic? Tyler, who's the president of the IFBB and the head judge of the IFBB, has said that because of my trouble gaining muscle, I should probably do classic, because if I'm making the weight for classic and competing in 212, it's silly. It's bringing a knife to a gunfight. The implication was, since he didn't criticize my conditioning, even though I blew my peak and my conditioning wasn't as good on stage as it was the preceding week, he didn't say the reason. He didn't give me conditioning as an area for improvement. He said arms, back thickness, back width, and waist size are areas for improvement. Now, if I was leaner or if I hadn't tried to fill up so much that I spilled over, my waist would have been much smaller. My waist was 2 or 3 inches smaller a couple days prior. So, and then thus relative, my back and my arms would look bigger. Likewise, if I bring my quad sweep, my back and my arms up, my waist will look smaller. So coming in tighter and bringing up my arms, my lats, my delt cap, my quad sweep, that'll all, and my waist was a 26 with a vacuum going into that show, but it was probably a 30 the day of because I couldn't vacuum because my waist was too full. So if I do 212 or if I do classic, it's confusing because I need to put on muscle to max out classic long before I'd ever hit 212. So probably I'm going to be doing classic next year. I don't know where or when, because my plan is to try to improve on these areas like back, arms, quad sweep. And if and when I hit a point where I'm no longer hungry, I will probably, instead of just mini cutting, I'll probably just do a real prep. And I may be prepping for the Detroit Pro, which is the end of March, because it's right here in my backyard. It's like 40 minutes from my house. Or if not, I'll take my happy ass and move to Texas. If I'm going to be, depending on who my coach is, I will move. Like if I'm going to be working with Jared Feather, I might move down to Texas and train with him in Texas. If I'm going to be working with Joe Bennett, I might move down to Tampa and train with him in Tampa. But I want to have, since I don't have to live in Michigan, I have an internet business, and I don't have to worry about the finances for the first time in my life. I can apply the money I need to get the best response. I need to find a coach who's willing to work with me in person so that we can have a whole year or 6 months or whatever we need to bring up the body parts and bring in the package and peak at the show. So I want to have a real relationship the way that Flex Lewis and Neil Hill had. And very few coaches who are professional coaches are going to allocate that much resources to one client when they have 100 clients. You get 1% of their attention, but my coach gets 100% of my attention. So I need to find someone who's, I don't expect diva treatment, but I am going to bend over backwards to be there to get that level of attention to detail. And part of the criteria is that I want someone who has experience in coaching, either themselves have been competing in the Olympia or coaching athletes for the Olympia. So either a pro or someone who's coaching pros at the Olympia level would be one of my criteria for someone to work with. Also, someone who is a collaborator, not someone who's, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it, otherwise you're fired. I don't put up with that shit. I'm 45 years old and I'm a doctor. I'm not going to have someone tell me what drugs to take. And if I don't do what they say, then I'm uncoachable. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They would have to have more education than me in medicine for me to take them more seriously than myself. But I am open-minded about things like nutrition and the artistic stuff of it. Like, these drugs will have a cosmetic effect and all this other shit. But someone who's going to be, do what I say, and if you ask me questions, I'm going to tell you to trust the process. I would never work with someone like that. Anyone who says trust the process, out the door, never look back. That's like basically gaslighting for coaching. Why do coaches want your heart rate at a certain point when doing cardio? I don't know. To me, that doesn't make any sense. You want your heart rate to be as low as possible, to have the highest percentage of the calories coming from fat and not carbs. If you're doing cardio for fat loss, if you're doing cardio for heart health, you want to have your heart rate over 80% because you need to apply a stress for hormesis to occur. And in this case, hormesis would be healthier heart. Should my HBCD intra be finished by mid workout? I think so. I don't know. Oh my God, more questions from Ray. He's like a child. Let's say I did one whole day of fasting and add the calories in the 6 other days, since weekly calories the same. Should I lose muscle, right? According to John Meadows, no. According to John Meadows, that's the way to do it. No one does it that way, though. Get wrecked, 0247. Okay, nutrition. Is there a simplest way to find your calorie requirements and macros based on body weights? Yes. Because all these calorie calculators do not take muscle into consideration. Yes. You weigh yourself every day for a week, eating a number. Just pick a number, 3,000 calories. Weigh yourself every day for a week. You either went down, or you went up, or you stayed the same. If you stayed the same, 3,000 is your isocaloric point. If you went down a pound, approximately 3,500 is your isocaloric point. If you went up a pound, approximately 2,500 is your isocaloric point. And you try to just work it so that you lose no weight for a whole week. And that's how you fine tune exactly what your isocaloric point is. Then if you want to gain muscle, add 200 calories. And if you want to lose fat, take out 200 calories. No, Dominic Cardone has not rejected me yet, but he might. So I'm going to talk to Phil Viz tomorrow. And I know that Dominic is a good coach. I don't know that I don't know where his strengths and weaknesses are, but I know that he does bring people in good shape. So that's someone who I need to talk to. I have had him on the podcast, I think a few years ago, but I'm not sure. We've had, back on the old podcast, the Weekly Grind, me and Keith had everybody on at one point. Rough Diesel, we call it Phil Kahar, like, oh my God, we've had John Meadows, we've had Scott Stevenson. I've had everyone on my old podcast, but there was no visual. So I just assume they don't know who I am because they never saw me. They just talked to me on the phone. With your experience, what can you solve the side effects from I don't really understand why people have all these problems. Generally, if you're having problems like that, you're just not healthy. You're not healthy enough to do drugs. You need to get healthy first. It's weird. People will be unhealthy and out of shape and fat, and they take a bunch of drugs and get side effects, when almost always all the side effects are from the person not being healthy. So I don't know enough about you to know why you have swollen ankles. I believe in you, bud. Thanks, man. All right. What would you be your typical cycle for those that just want to look good on the beach? Nothing. That's just such a shallow, shitty, vain reason to use steroids. You shouldn't do steroids for that. You should see a therapist for self-esteem issues. Your video on how to hydrate properly, plus the advice you've given drilling about taking GH with tests has been a game changer for me. Thank you. I appreciate that. My body aesthetic literally transformed in a few weeks. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. Dominic is coached by AJ, pretty sure. That's funny. Okay, so when Dominic Cardone turned pro, he was coached by Kevin Jordan. And at that time, Kevin was coached by Chad Nichols. And that's not a pretty sure, that is a fact, because I remember, because I was there. I watched Dominic Cardone turn pro. I actually was in that show. That's when Rough Diesel beat me for his pro card. All right. So, golden years. Do you think it might be more strategic now to target master shows with a 45 plus class? I plan on doing both. So the Texas was weird, is it's one of the only shows that doesn't have a master's class. The plan was to do Chicago. Well, the plan was to do Atlanta, do 212 and do Masters 212, do Chicago, do 12 and Masters 212, do it Tampa and 212 and Masters 212, do Texas 212, then do Masters World Championship 212. In order to get the fat off my glutes, I ended up dieting down to the 170s. And I was like, well, fuck, I shouldn't even be doing 212. I should be doing classic. because there's 100 more classic shows. But to the other point you're overlooking is there's no money in Masters, and you can't go to the Olympian Masters. So the Masters division is nice, but it might as well just be an amateur show. The water in my body seems to be everywhere. I need it. My waist is smaller, my arms are bigger. Well, on a cut, pumps are the best I've ever experienced. Right. I mean, that's the number one thing. That's why I told that other dude, you need to just be healthy. Is that they're not doing the basics. They're not making sure that their body fat's in the single digits. Like, they're not making sure that they're hydrated. They're not doing everything they should be doing. If you wanted your 60-year-old father to do some physical exercise, what would you recommend? Oh my God, Ray. What would you recommend him to do to stay fit? I don't know. Have him hire me, and then I'll tell him. Speaking of Ninja Turtle, did you read the last Ronin comic? No, I didn't. Aspartame is fine sweetener use? Yeah, I use it. What is your target longest prep for a show? Probably this most recent one. That was 21 weeks. That was the longest I've ever dieted straight with no diet breaks. Yeah. And then the last 5 weeks, there was no high days. Well, there was sporadic and random high days. Oh. Ray 2024. I don't know what that means. I think what he's saying is get with the program, Ray. Like, welcome to the 21st century. Like, I don't know what he's saying. Oh man, how long have I been on here? 2 hours and 15 minutes. Shit. That's what I do. Do you have more questions yet? No. All right, guys. What time is it? It's 11:39. I'm supposed to have a meal at 12. Man, Austin looks great. Shoot. Fire me. Nope. That's not. Oh man. Urishna looks so much better off season. Holy shit. Oh my god. If there's somebody who looks better off season, the fuck. I can't get over how good that girl looks. All right. Well, guys, looks like all you guys are worn out. I know I'm worn out. I'm about to take off. We got one last question. I'll ask you one more question. Who's got it? Ray's holding back because he realized. There we go. Here's Ray. Why are bodybuilders in Dubai so huge? I don't fucking know, man. Why are bodybuilders in Dubai so huge? I know that the Middle East has, in the last 15, 12 years, has completely changed. Completely changed. And that they've got the best gyms on the planet. They have very good scientific approach. They have people that train you in person and load and unload your plates for you. It's a wealthy community that they have access to everything. I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, Middle Eastern people respond better to nandrolone. I don't know if that's a real thing. Is it? Let me look into that directions. Oh yeah. Huh. Those are really good directions I wrote. I was smart as fuck 8 years ago when I made this. So it's like, I mean, you can take 4 scoops to see how you handle it. I don't know. I mean, the concept of high intensity but also high volume. I've watched Andrew train, and his intensity seems like a 5 out of 10 to me. But ooh. All right, guys, I'm gonna take off. Thanks, Ray, for the love you, and thanks, Robert, for the positive feedback. Thank Josh, as always, for being so goddamn smart. You single-handedly have prevented me from nuking mankind so many times. I can't even say to you the whole that every time I'm about to release my super virus, I think about, you know what, Josh isn't stupid, and I decide to spare humanity for one more day. All right, everyone, may the be more like Josh. May the force be with you.